Mayor King was talking about how she would love to hear more conversations about the challenges of quarantine right now for families whose children are getting exposed to COVID. And I want to say that I hear from many people in the community about that. But with that, Mayor King, what has it been like for families that you're interacting with and for your own family, if you were wanting to share?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I don't mind, I don't mean to keep bringing my personal experience to this meeting, but it's so pertinent because I know that I'm not the only one. And I was just thinking the other day, so we are on as a family week 3.5 of having an exposure and getting a sickness, and then passing it down the line because for quarantine purposes, you need to stay home and watch and wait for symptoms for 10 days after any exposure. And so what came to mind for me is that vaccinated parents will most likely be asked to go back to work because they aren't required to stay home. And so that means when you have a child or children that are staying home, there's families facing 3 weeks of not able to put their kids in childcare. And then also the expectation that they continue work if they're vaccinated and able. And so I just would like to know, or I'm wondering what resources are available, because I'm fortunate and I have the privilege that I'm home. But if that were not the case, going on 3 or 4 weeks with no income or no childcare is a huge barrier.
And having it repeat itself for who knows how long too, right? I mean, I think that's also the risk, is that having to have it happen again and again. And I will say that I know that in some communities there's the test to stay program where children can get tested and then go back into school. I actually don't know how it works, but I've brought it up with within our own county, and I know that folks are thinking about it. But that would be a tremendous opportunity where you get tested, you're shown to have a negative test, then you can go back into school. But yeah, I mean, the resources are limited right now, despite there being a lot of resources in the previous 2 school years, right? For folks with extended unemployment insurance and expanded benefits, especially. I do know that at the county, shortly after the pandemic reached the community, we passed a COVID leave policy, which allowed for taking 14 days if you were of sick leave that doesn't count against your accrued benefit leave, for, among many things, like a positive COVID test that requires quarantine, or for caring for loved ones, household members or family members who have had quarantine or been exposed. And then we've extended that as the pandemic has extended itself, which it feels like a significant move towards better care of our own employees at the county. But members of the community in Amity don't have that. Regular people don't have that in many communities. So.
Yeah, and I think that's what stuck out, is that I've seen a lot of good policy and a lot of good, we're going to do this for our employers, but that's not a blanket statement. And so some of these people, that are most at risk or most dependent on that single income or what have you, they're the ones that are really going to suffer in trying to do the right thing. So that's where you get people saying, well, I'm going to fudge these dates, or, oh, I'm going to take this risk, when, that's not equitable. And they're the ones, that most should not be put in that position.
Right. I was just thinking that was the logical conclusion of it. And then adding on to that, the challenges with finding testing that is available when you need it and also get to you quick results. The two in combination is clearly very challenging for people right now. Yeah. Betsy Emery, you are here and you're with us. What are your thoughts on it? How can the federal government help us with this? I'm putting you on the spot because I know you know these things.
I do not know these things, but I'm happy to look into these things. I do think that it's an interesting thing that you raised, though. Again, and I just always appreciate the perspective of other people because I'm not a parent, and so these things aren't always apparent to me. That was a great one. I have to give myself credit for that. But yeah, it is a good point because you're right. Like some people like myself, like people who work for the county, do have the ability to, I could work remote if I had a child hypothetically who was being, quarantined or something like that. But you're right. There are many workers who don't have that flexibility and don't have that worker protection. And I'm not sure whether there's conversation about that. So I'm happy to ask our healthcare person if there's resources available in any way.
That would be great, Betsy. And I think that, in March of 2020 and in April, the mayor of Amity at the time was very concerned because they were allowing people to not pay their water bills. And he was very concerned about the future viability of the water system because they were doing what they needed to do in order to keep people's water on. And then the bill that passed in either December or February of this year included being able to repay or getting, as part of the emergency rental assistance package, being able to pay back utility bills for, I think, up to 12 months. So we have a precedent here that a mayor of Amity says something, and then the representative of our senator's delegation then goes back and makes it happen. So no pressure. But I think that there is an opportunity there, right, for seeing this gap, that if we want to have schools open and we want them to be safe and we want to keep people stable while there is still a pandemic amidst us, that there's this gap.
Yeah, I'm drafting the email as we speak, so stay tuned.
I would also like to give a huge shout out to Betsy. She so kindly came and met with us here in Amity yesterday. We had a great discussion. And then, being a little short on time, our water tour consisted of a stroll through the park in the pouring down rain so that we could gaze out at the Salt Creek Bridge in the horizon. And
beautiful.
It was a great discussion. It was a great stroll, but she was a trooper as we just stood under those huge trees and got rained on. So thank you again.
Thank you for the time. It was great to get out and hear more and get clarity. I mean, yeah, I know we talked a month ago, but now that I'm a month more baked, it was really good to kind of revisit some of the conversation we had earlier and hear about some more of the nuance of the project. So thank you for having me.
And hopefully, Betsy, what do you get the sense that if a package passes, a bipartisan infrastructure package passes, that money for things like moving water lines to help with repairing bridges, do you think those will be eligible for the water system work or the water system funds?
Yeah, I would imagine that those are the types of funds. I imagine what would happen with the bipartisan infrastructure bill is that, as we know, there's lots of programs that exist to fund these types of things. And I think the goal is to just put a lot of money into those programs that already exist. And so I imagine that water, wastewater, sewer, roads, bridges, those program areas already will just receive I imagine a larger influx of funding. So yeah, I think water mains, water transmission lines, water treatment, I imagine all of those will become projects that may or may not be viable, likely will be viable probably.
Maybe fish passage barrier too? Come on, gotta bring that up, Betsy.
I didn't write this. I don't know. I can't speak to the fish passage construction opportunity.
I would just say that in our community, it's really costly to remove a fish passage barrier, but it's also really necessary for the future success and survivability of salmon and anadromous fish runs. So putting that out there. And it's
Well,
amazing. Right
we
now
did
it takes like
fund-
multiple, sorry.
We did fund a massive project in Tillamook County for their salmon superhighway project. That is completely a fish passage improvement oriented project. So yeah, definitely something the senator cares about.
And then just this, I feel like it was this last year, but time is weird. The Drift Creek over in Lincoln County had a big Forest Service road fish passage barrier that opened another, I want to say 7 miles of habitat on like a super prime creek. But we do have, we were up at Turner Creek, Betsy, in the rain to see Yamhill, the city of Yamhill's very small creek that they take their water out of. And one of the tributaries of Turner Creek has, that also then flows into the Yamhill River, Yamhill County road jurisdiction. There's a fish passage barrier, and it would again open up, I think in this case, it's 16 miles of prime designated habitat that fish just can't get to right now. And the stall, we have the culvert inventory of where fish can't get through, and we have jurisdiction of the road. We have no way to fund doing that work.
Good to know. I do know ODFW has like a massive list of projects that they they have a fish passage list that they put together every year or revisit every 2 year, 3 years. And that's a prioritized list of passage projects that they're working on. But yeah, I know that most of them are addressed by ODOT on like their maintenance schedule as they come and deal with roads that need to be improved or bridges that need to improve. They address the fish passage piece, but yeah, it's a very expensive endeavor.
For sure. And it's often it's generally restricted to state highways, right? Or I probably state forest land roads as well.
I don't know that it's state forest land. I don't know. There's a whole fish passage board too, and people can request waivers. Yeah, it's a lot.
Got it. Okay. Sweet. Thank you. Well, Mayor King, we digressed a little bit from your work and your question, but I think it's an important one. The county, is doing it for our own employees, but I'm not aware of any resources immediately available to folks who are quarantining. But I think you're very right. That is a huge gap right now and a huge challenge for families.
I hate to bring up issues, when I don't have some ideas or resources, but I just think getting it out there and sharing that perspective so there's more minds like trying to problem solve and noticing an issue is important.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like something that could be similar to the expanded child tax credit, where folks who have to quarantine have an ability to access money through the federal government. But sorry, Mayor Watkins, you were about to say something.
Is this sound a little bit better? Not really.
It doesn't sound good, but I still want to hear from you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just don't know what to do. We're a restaurant here in town that has had a couple of closures due to one of their employees testing positive or having some exposure to COVID. And when that happened, they closed until all of the employees have been tested and make sure that everybody is safe. Usually, it can be up to a week, but 3 or 4 days to get everybody tested. And I never really thought about that until you brought it up, Joaquin. But I think I'll probably check in with those guys and see what they do for their staff during that time, because it's going to be a concern. They seem to keep the same people. I don't see them rolling through staff, and I know they don't. They're really, really good to their folks. So I'll find out. I'll see if I can ask Justin and see what I can find out, and maybe have that for next week, or shoot you an email when I know something.
That sounds great, Mayor. And I will check in with Health and Human Services to see what is available on the county side as well. Because there may be something through public health that we can do. Awesome. And then what I'd like to do is hear updates from your communities, but I also want to get Betsy a chance to talk to us about what's happening at the federal level, the context of seeing things in our communities and what's happening in the federal level and how they're connected.
I guess I don't have a lot of, I guess I don't know that I have a lot of updates on that. I mean, the federal nexus or the federal work continues to be, at least that the senator is working on, continues to be really focused on election protection work, continuing to work on the appropriations process, and continuing to deal with the debt ceiling. So as of now, you know, the state highway fund and our debt ceiling are tied together through Halloween. And so we are kind of another one of these critical funding conversations that we find ourselves in every fall. So that's happening and taking up a lot of his time. And then they're still working through a lot of the nominations. In terms of regional connections, I guess I will say that coming out of all of the water infrastructure conversations that I've been having with communities and that Commissioner Kula and everyone has been talking about, you know, it just seems like there's a big, strong focus on water regionally and conversations. And so I'm personally just doing a lot of conversations with Business Oregon, USDA RD, and EPA to get a good feel of like what the opportunities are from federal purse strings that currently exist, so that if we do get big appropriations into those funds in the coming couple of years, I have my kind of understanding set for how we might be able to utilize some of those funds for each of the communities and the nuanced needs that you have. So that's kind of my background work going on. And I'm also, there's going to be a big meeting with Regional Solutions too and Business Oregon to kind of talk through the project list that all of you guys have been working on and submitted to Regional Solutions, and really start to come up with a game plan of how we might be able to work through those from a funding perspective with each of the different hats that we wear. So yeah, more to come. Lots of water conversations. If you want to spice it up with anything not water, feel free to reach out.
Okay. I'll say that childcare, right?
Yes,
so along those lines, actually, Betsy, what's the latest information on what's included in the non-bipartisan infrastructure bill that's also pending? Because it has a lot of things in it that, or originally had a lot of things in it that would be very important to our community, such as the childcare availability, making community college available to everybody, kind of some of those very big deals, expanding Medicare. So what's the status right now? Because I keep hearing like, oh, this is in, this is out.
Yeah, so am I muted still? No, okay. I had to go to my email. So essentially there are, I'll just run through each one of them. So basically there's another compromise that's supposed to be introduced sometime soon that's in the 1.5 trillion range. So well below the 1.8 to 2.3 that Manchin and Sinema were willing to entertain. So we're like coming in low as a means of saying like, let's do it. Like, please, let's move this forward. And so first, child tax credit, it's sounding like that instead of being permanently applied, like they were originally talking about, it's going to be a 1-year implementation of the child tax credit, which has already been implemented. So it'll be a 1-year continuation of that. Unfortunately, free community college is extremely expensive and basically dead in the package. And President Biden acknowledged that a couple of weeks ago, that provision is just not fundable, unfortunately. The Medicare expansion, it sounds like there may be opportunity there in terms of bringing it down to the 55 or the 60 age range. Dental is a very expensive component of it. So I know there's a lot of negotiations happening around how much / if dental will be included. And then the vision piece is still part of that negotiation too. There is a lot of conversation on trying to get some level of Medicare expansion into bill. Paid leave, big question mark. We're not sure if there's going to be any paid, the 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave that had been initially proposed. we're not sure if any of that will make it into the bill. Tax hikes. The original proposal was that there would be an increase in the tax ceiling for, or the tax rate for, the upper, very high earning incomes. That is not very palatable for a number of moderate and Republican individuals. And so it sounds like that proposal is not moving forward, but there is another kind of taxing initiative that they're looking at that Senator Wyden is working on. And it's really thinking about if you are acquiring like more than $1 billion in wealth, or you're holding $100 million in wealth for more than 3 consecutive years, then you should be taxed on that. So it's really, again, focused on that extremely high earning level. The prescription drugs, that is a conversation that's playing out locally with some of our delegates here in Oregon. On the House side, there's an impasse here really among like this very small group of moderate Democrats who don't want prescription bill or prescription Medicaid or prescription coverage, drug coverage in this bill. They want a separate narrow bill that addresses like very specific narrow provisions of what a prescription drug thing would be. So there's a lot of issues there, and I don't know what's going to happen with the prescription drug piece. Childcare, this is the one that everyone cares so much about. Basically, it's extremely expensive, and they're trying to find ways to like bring it down a little bit so that it'll be more palatable, especially because it's like 80% or something of voters are really supportive of this initiative. And so they want to include it in the package, but they're trying to find ways to trim off pieces of the cost. And really what I think that's going to look like is they're going to limit the child care credit or whatever it ends up looking like to specific income levels. So I think they might limit it at 60, 80K or something like that. Clean energy piece. This is the other one that was a massive piece and has been a big holdup. It sounds like the clean energy like conversion program, clean energy credit program that was going to be really utility oriented, probably will not be going through. And so now they're kind of looking at other options for reducing emissions. Health insurance credits. I'm just like reading this. That's another one. And then the housing aid, this is something that the senator is extremely interested in trying to retain. There's been conversation about cutting some of the components of the housing aid in it, and senator is clearly very disinterested in that and is really arguing to keep the full $300 billion that was written into the first act. So that's kind of the update. It's sad to see that things have been cut, but this is where we're at.
Well, that was a lot of stuff, and it's also hard to see what's left, but I'm sure that something is left.
Childcare is still left. We are still having Medicare components left. There's still energy components in it. We're still getting child tax credits. Like, there are still a lot of really good things in it.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you for that reassurance.
I promise. I know. That was just like the top 12 that came from the legislative director, so it wasn't framed very positively. Sorry.
And then Betsy, with the child care component, it's the goal of it is to cap the amount that a household is paying for childcare at like 7% of their income.
Yeah, that's what it is, about capping it to a specific percentage. And I think what it's going to end up looking like is there'll be a credit.
Okay.
Like to families, essentially a tax credit or something like that.
Okay. And do you think that, I mean, maybe you don't know the details of that, but would that be similar to the new enhanced child tax credit where it's actually going out to people, or are they going to have to wait until the end of the year?
I don't know the details of that. I don't know how it's written.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Just hopefully that people have learned that just a tax credit is not going to be helpful.
I know. Getting money into people's pockets is a lot more effective.
Yeah. It allows people to be flexible and, well, to make it happen. Mayors, are there questions for Betsy around this very fast run through a list?
Not really, just thank you for the update. And it seems like, this info has been trickling in and these numbers have been gearing down. And so I'm just anxious to see how it actually ends up. And I hope that, compromise can be made and this can be pushed forward in whatever realm it's going to end up as, because there's a lot of need there. And sometimes you have to say something is better than nothing. So thank you for the update.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then Betsy, is this particular bill the one that's for 10 years?
Yeah, so Build Back Better, the reconciliation bill, the $1.5 trillion bill, yes, that is paid for over a 10-year window. So it'd be $1.5 trillion paid over 10 years. But a number of the programs within it will only be funded for a 1-year window, like the child tax credit. So that's the thing to think about. Not all of the programs are 10-year programs. In fact, I don't think very many of them are.
Okay, that's good to know, because when you divide 1.5 trillion by 10, you get a smaller number. I've learned.
Yeah.
Right. So that makes sense, because I was like, how are we doing 150 billion a year for this vast array of things that are already costly to American families? But okay, that makes sense. Great, thank you. I do know that the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I was present. Maybe Mayor King was present for this too, from MWAC, the Mid-Willamette Area Committee on Transportation, which is an advisory body to ODOT, was presenting. We had a presentation from maybe the financial side of ODOT about what's in the bipartisan infrastructure package. And because it's funded for 5 years, they expect, oh my gosh, however much it is, for local bridge replacement projects, it works out to $5.5 million across the state for all non-state highway bridges. And it's amazing that this is, I feel like, from my perspective, $5.5 million across the state for rebuilding bridges is absolutely nothing. Yeah.
It was 52.
So I'm excited.
Per year.
Sorry, what?
Oh, 52 million per year for bridges.
52 million for for the state for the year.
So that's like one bridge, right? I'm just kidding.
Well, fortunately, our bridges are a lot less costly. But that is nice. The nice thing about it. And in fact, across the state, state highway bridges are very costly, but doing work and repairs and upgrades and resilience on county bridges is actually a pretty affordable thing. Like the Salt Creek, there's the ODOT Salt Creek Bridge, and then further downstream towards McMinnville is a Salt Creek Bridge that Yamhill County owns and operates, right at the little burg of Whiteson. And that one, it's a very long bridge, and it's very tall, and it's in need of many repairs. But we were able to get it from essentially being closed to being load rated at, I think, 30 tons, with $200,000 of steel piling driven through the bridge. And they really just cut a hole in the pavement and then pounded a piling in and then secured it to the infrastructure. And it was more than one piling, but it's really amazing what you can do on a smaller bridge. Okay, any other question for Betsy? Awesome. Well, thank you, Betsy. And thank you for being in our communities lately. It's been great to see you in person, and just to have you out and see the real tangible things, like the little tiny creek that is Turner Creek, right?
I really will never forget. I will never forget that little creek.
Exactly. My hope
And be like,
is
this
that
supplies water
Representative
for how many people? No.
Truly, it's a very picturesque. Mayors, if you haven't seen the city of Yamhill's water supply, it's gorgeous, but it's about this wide. And you know that they've had challenges with water there, and it's very understandable then why they've had challenges with their water supply. It's nice to see that at least the South Yamhill is a little bit bigger. I do with that though want to ask, what are the updates on the Carlton Reservoir project and the Waterline project?
Yeah, well, we're done with replacing the line, and so now we're working on paving, and I think getting some of those things taken care of. They're working on improving the road that goes up into the Panther Creek Reservoir. So next year, when they get ready to start cleaning out the reservoir, they'll actually be able to get into it. That road was mainly the width of take a Honda Pilot. It was not the width of a Honda Pilot. I know that because we drove up in a Honda Pilot. So they're widening and improving that. It was just a little logging stub is all it was, basically. And so we're widening and improving that and getting it ready for next year. I think in June or late May is when they'll start doing the dredging on the reservoir, once they've gotten past the turbidity dangers and some of that stuff. So that's what's going on there. And I drove up, it wasn't last week, it was the week before last. I think I drove up Meadow Lake Road, and you can see that we're kind of starting to do some paving and do some work up there. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, that's one huge project that, I mean, we've been talking about that thing for 5 years. So getting it done is just amazing to finally see something like that get done. It really gives you a little bit of hope that things are moving ahead. We're very excited that, and I can't remember, I was trying to find the name of it, and I can't remember the grant program that Shannon submitted the grant request to, but we just received a $100,000 grant to improve the west end of our Main Street, so West Main Street, which, yes, we are so excited because that will address sewer and any water lines going through there, plus just the surface of the street, which right now, like I said, I live a block off of that street, and when trucks are going by, especially when the logging trucks are going by there, I've been shaken awake in my house at 4 o'clock in the morning. So getting that fixed is going to be, and for the poor people that have lived on that street for all these years, you know, they're pretty excited too. Or they will be when they find out. It's, you got it. It takes a few times to tell them before they really catch on to what's going on. Just, you know, they're busy. They've got other things to do. They don't think about it. Let's see. There was one other thing I meant to mention. Oh, our city staff are looking at and trying to figure out ways. We have obviously folks in town who are struggling with paying water bills and sewer bills and getting those things done. And we're actually looking at putting together a fund that the rest of us that are paying our bills can, if we want to donate it to, round up our water bill or whatever, and donate into that fund. So there's a little fund in the office for folks that are having trouble with water bills. There's some other things that they could probably reach out for, but this gives them a local place, and they don't have to go to the county or go to somebody else outside of the county. That's a hard thing to do. And so just having that in our office and available is something that would be a really nice thing to be able to provide for people. Other than that, the last 4 days we've watched the Yamhill River come up. I don't know how many feet. It's gone from almost mud in most of the places along here to don't go in the water because then you get swept away. Current. So that's really nice to see right now. And I think that But the main thing is we'll just keep hammering away on our infrastructure and trying to get that taken care of. About once a week we've got a water leak somewhere, and I saw the guys heading out this morning with the backhoe, so I figured there was one somewhere uptown. So we just keep working away on those. So, and we're looking forward to Friday morning. And I know that the staff was meeting this morning, planning their agenda and figuring out what they're going to be doing. Yeah. With this weather, we might be keeping you in bed a little bit more than.
And promised us a site visit.
Okay.
Have it in an email.
Okay, I will remind her of that.
Well, she did ask about how many people for a presentation as well. So
yeah,
I think she's got contingency planning going on.
She's pretty good at that. It's been interesting watching her operate because she seems to be pretty good at covering all the bases. So it's been really enjoyable. It's a relief. It's truly a relief. So. That's, I think, about it.
Well, Mayor, before I open it for questions, I did want to note that as I was mentioning that the mayor of Amity is always pushing these things and then successful with them. Michael Cape and Mayor King, the funding that came to the state from the federal government for utility bills, past due utility bills, can be for for 12 months of the previous, since March of 2020, and then for 6 months going forward. And you access it by typing in emergencyrentalassistance.org. And really I should do this because this is how most people are accessing it, but I still do this. And so that's, you don't have to go to a county, you don't have to go to the state. It's slow right now, but it's at least for the next year or so, this will be a source of funding for folks, and it'll allow them to get caught up, and it'll allow, your city to be made whole as well.
Thank you. I will have to come back and get that. They probably have the information in the office, but I will check with that. And then just as you were saying that, I thought of something and water, Yamhill Water. We are starting, I think, weekly conversations with the city of Yamhill about water assistance and working with each other to see what we can do to help each other out, or if there's any way we can, or what we're looking at. So, yes, that's it. Wait, did you have your hand up, or were you asking?
Why I did it that way, but I'll also flag, I just got off a call with Yamhill Community Action Partnership, and they still have like $2.5 million in rental assistance relief funding to get out the door. And they also have a pretty healthy fund for energy bills and things like that too. So if you're looking to direct people towards something, Yamhill Community Action Partnership seems to have a lot of resources there.
Thank you.
And I will note that they still need you to go through emergencyrentalassistance.org to start the process. So if you go on, like this or like this, and you're like, hey, I need emergency rental assistance or utility help, you'll fill it out and it'll get sent to them, and they'll handle it through their source of funding.
Okay.
But they've been doing this, in some form since March of 2020, and have done an amazing job with it, from food to rental assistance, to keeping people in their houses, to finding new housing opportunities.
Yeah, I think I know that there are programs out there. I think there's always that kind of group of people that they just have a hard time reaching beyond the city limits. And so I don't know exactly what they're planning on doing with that, or if they'll push it ahead, but it's sometimes, especially when you get into some of the older generations, it's just a hard thing for them to do. So we'll see what happens.
And I know, Mayor, that at least one other city, and I can't remember now, actually before pandemic times was working with YCAP, so that if somebody came to the city and saying, hey, I can't afford to pay the bill, that they would work through YCAP. So it would be like, okay, here, you're gonna work with YCAP, but it all stays within the city because of that very thing, that it's like, it's local people, you know each other, you're not asking for help from outside.
Yeah, yeah. Before the pandemic times.
Truly.
Glad.
Well, I'm excited to hear that you're in conversations now with the city of Yamhill. Your improved water system could be a real benefit to them.
Well, we're going to be looking at, with the new GR1 that just went in, we've got 38 new homes in that one. The second one, we're looking at well over 40, somewhere between 40 and 50 homes there. So we have some real concerns too. And Yamhill is looking at, they've got the one and another new subdivision going in over there. They had to put on hold because of the water. So, once again, we may be able to help each other to a certain extent, but with the way the growth is going, it may run out quicker than we would normally have anticipated. So that's a concern. It's one I consider.
And I will say that Betsy and I were both at a presentation from McMinnville Water and Light on kind of their situation right now, what it would take to connect other cities. And so that was really helpful to kind of understand how they've set it up with Lafayette, kind of how they set it up temporarily with Carlton, and kind of what their motivations and their abilities are. I also learned one interesting thing, which is that the city of McMinnville, or city residents in McMinnville, use more water combined or Mac Water and Light provides more water than all the other cities combined in the county. And I was like, well, that's really, really interesting.
I think they've had an access to abundant, not terribly expensive water compared to everybody else for so many years that water, I'm not sure water rationing or water conservation has been a big issue in McMinnville. It'll be interesting to see if we get into the water authority, what happens with some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be interesting to see. And I'm supportive of whatever happens. I definitely see that people working together and cities working together is a good way to kind of soften some of these blows and some of the extremes of weather that we have seen and we will see.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, I did want to note that so the Yamhill River, you noted, is very high and has risen a lot. And in driving around the county, especially with these water tours, I have seen a lot of erosion and a lot of water that has soil in it. And I will note that on the agenda for this week is approval of a contract with an outside firm that does stormwater management plans for Yamhill County. So they're going to draft our total maximum daily load plan for mercury for Yamhill County. And so that'll apply both to new construction that's out in the county, because we'll have to manage their stormwater, and it'll also apply to all work and like travel on Yamhill County roads. And we have 714 miles of road or something like that in the county, so it'll apply to a lot of the county. And basically what it'll be is our goal will be to eliminate soil in the water. So anytime that there's water running, whether it's off of a road, in a ditch, out of a pipe, that it be clear. Just a big challenge, but it's one that we have to do.
Is the 700 miles, is that all paved road or is that paved in unpaved?
It's about half and half, paved and unpaved. Yeah. And in some other county-related news, I'm super excited to, of course, join you this week in Carlton. And Betsy and Fritz Graham from Senator Wyden's office are both going to be there as well. And I think Representative Noble and Representative Scharf will be there as well. Representative Scharf is going to be a little bit late, but she also, she doesn't actually represent your area. Sorry.
Though, I mean, they're close enough that, we're still a community of interest.
Exactly. And so we will be in Carlton in the morning, and then we'll actually be looking at the Palmer Creek Irrigation District's bridge, dam. And then we're going to go to the city of Dayton for the final visit of the day. And the Palmer Creek Irrigation District is an interesting one because it's actually a dam that's under a bridge, which is the weirdest thing ever. But the dam was built probably around the same time as a county bridge that goes across this creek. And so you're standing on the dam and you're looking up at the timbers of the bridge. And so one of their concerns is that the dam breaks, it fails because it's very old. It will just take out the bridge too. And a lot of things downstream, but it's a really fascinating thing. I mean, I'm a farmer, so this is as a farmer saying this, it really looks like farmers built the bridge. The dam.
Where is that?
It's on Stringtown Road. Do you know where Stringtown Road is? So you have Lafayette Highway and Wallace Road run parallel to each other. And then in between them, just south of the city of Dayton, is perpendicular is Stringtown.
Right.
You'll go over. Yeah. But it's the most Palmer Creek Irrigation District provides the water to the most productive and highest value land in Yamhill County in terms of ag production. It's something like $650 million a year are produced from the irrigated lands that this irrigation district makes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing amount of money from that farmland, but it's a lot of nursery crops. It's a lot of it.
I was going to ask down that way. That's what I would first think of as nursery.
Yes, yeah. So I'm excited about that one because it's hard. Farmers and irrigation district managers often don't know where to go when they're like, okay, this thing is failing. Are there federal resources or state resources? So making that connection. Betsy, this is a fascinating thing is that the dam, because it's failing, releases enough water just through seepage under it that they have a water right through the Army Corps complex of stored water. They have a water right on the Willamette, so they pump twice as much water out of the Willamette as they use because it's running out through underneath the dam, which is spectacular. I think it's like a mind-blowing waste, but also like you're pulling water out of the river for fish too.
Yeah.
And for swimming in, selfishly.
Well, we'll be interested when we get finished up here with our reservoir and the waterline to see how much we're saving or what we are saving in water. And I think there are going to be a whole lot of people along that water line who are going to find themselves short on water because I think they've been benefiting in a weird way from all of our leakage. So, if we can fix that, and if we can get our infrastructure fixed so we don't have, pipes that look like waffle holes, why, we'll be in pretty good shape. I love my cat, Betsy.
It's pretty great. This reminds me. Oh,
he's an attention whore. He just wants everyone to love him.
We are. I will say that the people getting a good irrigated hay crop out of your water line reminds me that in Central Oregon right now, there's funding, thank you to Senators Merkley and Wyden, for piping a lot of irrigation canals, right? And one of the opposition notes to that is folks who have like a riverfront property where they really like in front of their house having this little water body run by all the time, and they're mad about it, they're losing it. And I thought, well, I hadn't ever thought about that this is artificially created creek.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Betsy.
No, I won't.
It happens when you live in farm country. There are a lot of unintended consequences to irrigation that we put in, many years ago and decades ago. And we've gotten used to that and assuming that it's always going to be there. People forget that was not a natural waterway. And it may not be anymore.
That is a very good point. And when I was in Southern Oregon this last summer, the Talent Irrigation District had such a low level of water in their reservoirs that they had to start running water in their ditches really late, and then they had to stop it really early. And one of the things they discovered is all the people along the ditch who have shallow domestic wells didn't have any water.
Yeah.
And the irrigation district would love to pipe all of their ditches so that they can retain all that water. So they only need, X amount of water to actually irrigate crops. But they're kind of worried, to be honest, about their neighbors with their domestic wells and just not having any water. So talk about, you have water in your well because there's a ditch running.
Right. Water.
I love that you shake your head, but it is so tricky, right?
Yeah. And it's like the issue to deal with right now, that's the other thing. It's like we're trying to, there's just so much history to water, and sifting through that to find a sustainable future is really difficult. So thank you everyone for your hard work and for being interested in the hard lift to ensure sustainable futures for our communities.
Truly, thank you for that. And I will say that I need to be into another meeting, but I did want to note that the city of Yamhill, speaking of water and our futures, is actually having a town hall tomorrow evening, specifically around when presented with various options, what do city residents feel most comfortable about, and to keep them really well informed. So I'm going to be at that, and I hope that it goes well, and I hope that it's really helpful to people.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
Supposed to be at that.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Remember to wear a mask, get vaccinated, maybe even someday children, and we will see you next week.